Coming up, do you have Alzheimer's? A new test could have the answer. And the solution to winter blues.
And 60 Carats, dancing to a youthful beat. All this and more next on Time for Living.
Hello, I'm Rex Traylor.
And I'm Janet Jagalian. Welcome to Time for Living, a new show airing every Wednesday from 3 to 4 p.m. right here on New England Cable News.
And with 10,000 baby boomers celebrating their birthday every day, by the way, that's one every 10 seconds, Time for Living addresses the needs of the largest growing population of America, the so-called baby boomers. So if you're 50 years or older, you'll want to tune in each week as we introduce you to people who are taking on new challenges,
making interesting discoveries, and enjoying a new way of life. Our special profile segment, Second Effort Salute, will showcase individuals who've dealt with adversity and change and prospered from it.
Now on our Time for Health and Finance and More segment, we feature ways to better manage your money, provide you with tips on health and diet, and investigate how government and business is making living better in later years.
Our Traveling Around segment features take you to places giving older Americans a better look at traveling in the United States and abroad.
And best of all, you can join us live right here at 617-244-3344 and ask questions of experts talking about issues affecting people in their later years.
So let's get started with today's show, where we look at the issues surrounding Alzheimer's disease. If you have any questions regarding Alzheimer's, pick up the phone and call us now. The number again, 617-244-3344.
If you've ever known anyone who's had Alzheimer's disease, you know how devastating it can be, both for the patient as well as for his or her family. The emotional, social, and financial cost of caring for an Alzheimer's patient are high. Family members often risk their own health in order to care for the Alzheimer's patient at home. Alzheimer's is a progressive, degenerative disease that attacks the brain and results in impaired memory, thinking, and behavior. It's recognized as the most common cause of dementia. And while scientists are still looking at the causes of Alzheimer's disease, Time for Living's Steve Brown tells us we're learning more and more about this disease.
Millions of Americans were shocked at the news in 1994 when former President Ronald Reagan revealed he was suffering from Alzheimer's. If the one-time leader of the free world could fall victim to this debilitating disease, aren't we all vulnerable? While the answer at this time, unfortunately, is yes, it is comforting to know that more and more is being learned about Alzheimer's every year. Here are some facts. 4 million Americans suffer from Alzheimer's at a cost of $80 billion a year. About 10% of people at age 65 are affected by the disease. That percentage rises to nearly 50% for those aged 85 and older. One of the toughest things about Alzheimer's is not knowing if you will fall victim to this mind-robbing disease.
And I'm going to open up your eye and you look straight up at the ceiling, okay?
A simple eye test using a diluted form of a common eye drop may help diagnose Alzheimer's before it strikes.
It allows us in a very simple, non-invasive way to distinguish patients with a probable diagnosis of Alzheimer's disease from normal, healthy individuals who are living in the community.
The drug is called tropicamide. It's widely used to dilate pupils for regular eye exams. For this test, though, an extremely diluted form is placed in the eye and the pupils are measured continuously for an hour. Researchers have found that after 30 minutes, non-demented elderly control subjects showed only a 4% increase in pupil size, whereas those with presumed Alzheimer's disease showed at least a 13% increase.
We don't understand the mechanism, and only when we understand the mechanism will we be able to relate in very direct ways why it may people may be hypersensitive whether they have Down's or Alzheimer's disease. That remains to be figured out.
Researchers do know that if this test continues to prove as promising in larger scale studies, it will enable doctors to screen patients well in advance of symptoms and perhaps one day halt the disease.
currently in development are several new types of therapies for Alzheimer's disease that are very different than therapies that have been tried in the past. And these are really aimed at interfering in the disease process itself. But their success critically depends on their ability to be administered very early in the course of the disease when they can do some good. Because once the brain is damaged, it's not a set of tissues that can be repaired.
Margarita, how old are you today?
Ahora sí que yo no sé. She doesn't remember.
For some, like Margarita Gomez, however, it's already too late. She was diagnosed with the disease 3 years ago, but her daughter is hopeful she may take advantage of this promising step forward.
I don't think too much about it at the moment. I'm just trying to deal with the problem that we have now with her.
But you hope in the future that it may be available?
I certainly do.
The disease is particularly troubling for the family of Alzheimer's patients.
Honestly, I really thought that we would find her on the side of the road somewhere, dead.
Beth Mahoney's mother has Alzheimer's. Her mother also loves taking long walks, a dangerous combination. 2 years ago, Beth's mother wandered off in the middle of a snowstorm and was gone all day.
Actually, she had a thin jacket on, and luckily she had her boots on. She did put those on, and she walked, it has to be at least 10 miles, into Boston, and she used to live in Boston, and she had said she was going home.
Fortunately, Beth's mother was wearing one of these, a Wanderer's Alert bracelet. For $25, families can enroll their loved ones in the national network and purchase a bracelet. Their name and an identification number is engraved. And while some might question the undignified perception of the tag, the Alzheimer's Association supports the measure.
The serious nature of wandering, you have to look at that in relation to the issue of wearing a bracelet. And in our opinion, the trade-off of wearing a small, unobtrusive bracelet that provides some critical information in terms of who they are and where the person can call to help them get home more than offsets any issue of wearing a bracelet with identifying tag on it.
Police departments have also been trained to recognize the bracelets and now understand how to better handle these wanderers when they surface in their communities.
Everybody is not considered a vagrant or just a person in the neighborhood. Officers, when they observe those kinds of people, that's always in the back of their mind, that it's possibly an Alzheimer's person, and that affects directly the way that they approach them.
Beth believes the bracelet saved her mother's life, and although she's now in a nursing home, it's a relief knowing she's safe.
Thank God she had it on, or I don't know where she would be right now.
If you or someone you love suffers from Alzheimer's, you can get needed support and information from the Alzheimer's Association at 1-800-272-3900. I'm Steve Brown. Time for Living.
Joining us now in the studio, Dr. William Milberg. Dr. Milberg is Associate Director for Research at the Geriatric Research, Education and Clinical Center at the Brockton West Roxbury VA Medical Center. Also an Associate Professor of Psychology at Harvard Medical School and an expert on Alzheimer's disease. We welcome you, Doctor.
Thank you.
There's no doubt that there is a great deal of mystery and confusion and perhaps a great deal of fear that's associated with Alzheimer's disease. We know sort of what it is, but do we know anything more about the causes or what one might do to help prevent or retard this process?
Those are a lot of questions. First, the question about causes. We're beginning to get some understanding of some of the causes, the underlying changes in the brain that are related to Alzheimer's disease, and even the fact that there may be some genetic causes of it, that there are some forms of Alzheimer's disease that run in families, and there may be a predisposition to developing the disease, in some cases earlier than in others. As you get older, the probability of showing Alzheimer's disease developing increases, so by the time you're 85 years old, it's quite a prevalent
Is it
disorder.
a single disease? I mean, is there one thing that goes awry?
Well, the term Alzheimer's disease does refer actually to a specific neuropathological entity, that when you look at the brain of a patient with Alzheimer's disease, you can find changes that are definitional of that disease. However, there are many different diseases that produce changes in cognitive ability. Alzheimer's disease is just one of those diseases. And there are some that have the same sort of course as Alzheimer's, that there's degenerative changes in cognitive ability over time, where the underlying pathology is quite different, and there is a variety of other illnesses that are not Alzheimer's, in fact, that have some some hope of being treated
So
because they're affecting different systems.
If a person has had, say, many little strokes, if they have hardening of the arteries, could they, in a sense, be misdiagnosed by some, or could a family member feel as though this is what is occurring?
To a family member and to the person with the problem, there is a number of different changes and disorders which can feel like you're getting dementia. Certainly, one of the diseases you mentioned, multi-infarct dementia or Binswanger's disease, is a very common cause of dementia, but a very different cause of the dementia of Alzheimer's disease.
And a different course as well, is it?
Very different course. Instead of having a steady, slow decline, as Alzheimer's disease typically does, the course may be more stepwise and more jagged and more unpredictable.
Tell me about the genetic factor. Is that a high type of risk? Or
well, there's been some incredible advances, even just in the last year, in identifying, first of all, identifying a gene that seems to characterize patients with Alzheimer's disease and their family members. But the more important thing, and this has been the real advance, is connecting that gene with some of those specific neuropathological changes and actually working out a mechanism for showing how having that gene actually will produce changes in the brain that are related to Alzheimer's disease. And it's a very exciting development because that opens up to us a completely different set of approaches than we currently have been trying to use. Right now, a lot of the approaches for treating Alzheimer's disease has been based on altering the chemistry of the brain because there's been a lot of evidence that there's a depletion of certain chemicals in patients with Alzheimer's disease.
Which leads me to the question
Right.
that I'm sure a lot of people are probably thinking about right now, and that is there any evidence that aluminum and Alzheimer's has any kind of relationship?
It's very controversial. The evidence has been largely debunked, and I think most people in my field are very skeptical about it. But there's some very interesting work out of Toronto where what they've looked at is the relationship between the prevalence of Alzheimer's disease and the presence of alum in the water supply. Alum is a disinfectant for water supplies. And there does seem to be a difference in incidence for individuals at risk related to the amount of alum in the blood supply. So one shouldn't be worried about using aluminum pans or aluminum foil in baked potatoes.
Because a lot of people threw them all out, you know.
That shouldn't be a worry, but it's not, there may be something to it, but not that should be generally scary to the general population.
I think it's important for people to also understand what the different stages are. There's early onset, and then we know there's the later stages, but can you give us an idea of what takes place in some of these?
Well, there is a characteristic, there's a lot of variability, first of all, but there is a characteristic onset where patients forget new information. No matter how hard they try, they can't learn new things. There's a lot of different kinds of problems that one can have with memory, but that seems to be a core symptom, and it's important because that symptom is also related to the neuropathology. Also, early in the course of the disease, a little bit after that memory, this kind of special kind of memory problem, is the inability to find names and find words. Usually when you're speaking, words come to you very easily. Sometimes those words just don't occur to you as easily and as fluently as they did before. Those can be some very common markers of the early part of the disorder.
The important thing also is that there are certain changes that take place that are frightening, that are difficult for people to deal with. There's a paranoia period, I understand. There's also a time when a person is dangerous to themselves.
Well, these are not typical, and there are cases where some patients actually their changes occur the first in the changes are in their judgment and in their ability to predict.
And behavior?
In their behavior. That's not the typical Alzheimer's patient. As I said, there are other diseases where that is very characteristic, but it can characterize some patients with Alzheimer's disease.
On the clip that we saw the woman whose beloved
wandering.
One wandered, and you know, it's a miracle that she found her way back.
Very common later in the disorder.
What about
wandering? The impulse to wander and to move seems to be very strong in the disease, but that's much later in the course of the disease.
When is it a problem for someone to be driving?
Well, there are many patients who have been diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease who are driving, and it's a very difficult issue because there really is no way to easily take those patients off the road. They're encouraged to do it, but in fact, the diagnosis of Alzheimer's disease and showing the cognitive changes associated with Alzheimer's disease is in fact related to more errors in driving and more accidents and getting lost when driving. There are a lot of dangers associated with it.
So is it an individualized sort of thing? If you feel that that person's at risk, you're going to take the keys away or take whatever action you have to?
It has to be, at this point, is left, the family can be encouraged to have the individual stop driving, but it's very difficult to get an individual to stop driving, even though they may have significant problems, particularly if they don't recognize that they're having those problems.
It also must be very difficult for a loved one who has this problem, has this disease, to for the rest of the family members to express care and concern and still have them hold their head high and have their self-esteem. Is that something that has to be taught the family, or have them shown some mechanisms that would be helpful in them dealing with their loved one?
I think that's why it's very important for when these problems are identified that the family do seek out medical help and get the diagnosis correct, and education and understanding the characteristics of the disease and the course of the disease really is very helpful in having the family deal with the family member and dealing with such issues as self-esteem.
We'll try to get into some more information that will be helpful to people, family members who are out there. And we want also to have you have an opportunity to take calls and to ask Dr. Milberg questions. So if you have a question about Alzheimer's disease for the doctor, please call us at 617-244-3344. Welcome back to Time for Living. I'm joined here in studio with Dr. William Milberg, and we're talking about Alzheimer's disease, and we'll also be taking your calls. Now, before we get right to the phones, I just want to ask you one quick question, and that is whether or not a person who's suspected of having this problem, should the first thing be a good, thorough physical exam?
It's critical, because even though there's some, as we saw in the film, some potentially very good new tests for identifying the disorder, the clinical diagnosis of Alzheimer's disease is still made by exclusion. That is, you rule out a lot of different causes of cognitive change other than Alzheimer's disease, and that has to be done in an expert manner.
Would they use CAT scans and MRIs?
CAT scans and MRIs may be part of it. It really depends on the presentation of the symptoms. As you get older, there are diseases in any number of physical systems that can produce symptoms that may not be distinguishable from Alzheimer's disease, including depression.
Many people still feel that the only way to diagnose it is through an autopsy after death. That's why I'm asking these questions. Once
all the other causes are ruled out and the patient does show a characteristic set of symptoms, one can suspect with great confidence that Alzheimer's disease is the problem.
Let's get to the phones now. And Linda from Beverly is on Time for Living. Go ahead, Linda.
Hi, good afternoon. I have a question about my father's in his mid-70s, and our family, my brother and I are concerned, his children are concerned. The first part of my question is that when we were small children, my grandmother exhibited many different symptoms that now we think that she probably had Alzheimer's, but at the time, people just called it other things, and I'm wondering if that's often the case, that could be my father has, inherited or whatever from my grandmother, because
is it
now
like senile dementia, or is it Alzheimer's? It's confusion, sure.
Right, and now with him and his siblings, it seems like they say, well, he's getting older, he's confused, he's the oldest of 10, but we are concerned that maybe he's displaying these same symptoms that she, got worse and worse and worse.
Has he had a good physical exam?
Well, he does have, being in his mid-70s, he has quite a few health problems, diabetes for one.
Yeah.
But yet he also seems to have a lot of the symptoms, progressing that we seem to recognize as potentially Alzheimer's.
Not that the doctor can diagnose by way of a phone call, but what is your advice?
Absolutely not. As I said, this is a perfect case where your father should go in for a full evaluation to determine the various causes, possible contributions to his changes in his function. You mentioned he had diabetes. That's often a risk factor for developing some of the diseases that aren't Alzheimer's disease, but also produce dementia-like symptoms. However, as I mentioned before, there are forms of the disease that do have a genetic component. It does seem to run in some families. However, just because you had another family member that showed it doesn't mean that this is a particular case of that.
Okay, I'm wondering if you see with older people. I'm wondering if you see with older people, like he has to want to go to the doctor and have these, and he's in full denial about that. Do you see that a lot with elderly people? That they really don't want to admit that there could be a problem like this. It's very upsetting, and he becomes very upset when we try to, even insinuate that this may be something that he needs to.
Linda, it's something that you're probably going to have to get around the table and sit down and talk and convince him that this is the action that he's got to take. And thanks so much for your call. And Barbara from Rochester is next on Time for Living. Go ahead, Barbara.
Hi there.
Hi.
A takeoff from what was just discussed. My father was diagnosed with dementia last year, and what I'm wondering is, what's the difference between Alzheimer's and dementia?
It's a good question.
Good question. Dementia is a general term for describing degenerative changes in mental abilities, and it usually to get the diagnosis of dementia, there are certain criteria you have to meet, but it usually involves losing abilities in a number of different areas progressively over time. Alzheimer's disease is simply one cause of dementia. There are many other causes of dementia, some of which currently there are no treatments for, some of which have a fairly slow course, and some of which are more manageable than others.
Are the more common causes, though, little strokes or hardening of the arteries?
Well, if we look at the current epidemiological studies, that is the studies of causes of diseases, Alzheimer's disease is still the most common single cause of dementia. But if you add up all the others, there are lots of other reasons, so that many patients will show dementia but not have Alzheimer's disease.
Barbara, thank you very much for your call. Next is Mary from Alston. You're on Time for Living.
Hello?
Hello.
I just want to know, why does some patient get so angry? My husband has Alzheimer's. He's 2.5 years almost in a nursing home. He does not have any special examination or anything.
But this anger is also exhibited by many people. Isn't that true?
Well, I think a more fair generalization is that in many patients, emotions, personality traits can be exaggerated. Tendencies that were previously there can be stronger. In other cases, personality traits, things that we felt were characteristic about the patients, become muted and become lessened. So it's not uncommon to show more anger, for the patients to be have more humor in some cases, really depending on whether it's in some cases the patients seem to be more depressed and inactive as a result of the disorder.
And this sometimes becomes a problem for the caregiver.
Absolutely.
This is when there has to be a choice made as far as just where they're going to have to be placed.
That's correct, and that's part of being fully evaluated, because in some cases when the patient does show problematic symptoms, some of those can be treated medically, can be managed. If the patient gets easily agitated, that can sometimes be managed medically.
Mary, thank you very much for your call.
Thank you.
Doctor, there was an article in one of our local newspapers just last week about a police chief who had come down with Alzheimer's, and they were unable to even place him in nursing homes because he was so violent and unable to control through medication as well. Is this a very small segment of the population that's so affected?
It's not the most common form of it, but it's not so uncommon that it isn't encountered. There are some, if he really needs a placement, there are some placements that are more accustomed to dealing with those problems than others. This is something where if the patient's family begins working with a social worker or someone who understands what available community resources there are, that these kinds of issues can be dealt with. But if he hasn't been fully evaluated, again, I'm repeating the theme, it is some of those symptoms can be treated.
Constance from Bradford, you're next on Time for Living. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. I would like to ask the doctor what type of doctor you should see for some of these symptoms. I have an internist, but do you see a neurologist or to get some of these further tests, as he stated?
That's a good question.
It's a great question. There are a couple of alternatives that are available. I would start with your family physician. If you don't have a family physician who feels they can refer you, there is the Alzheimer's Disease Society or Association, which have support groups and can refer you to a number of area hospitals that specialize in dealing with this. You could see a neurologist, and there's some excellent neurologist-based clinics in the Boston area. But a new alternative is geriatric medicine, and I think it's an excellent place, because in geriatric medicine the patient is treated holistically, and I don't mean in the sense of using non-standard medical treatment. What I mean by that is that many aspects of the patient's function are looked at, and medical status are looked at simultaneously, and that I think is an excellent way for evaluating this the presence and diagnosing this disorder.
One quick last question I've got to ask you. My husband won't forgive me if I don't, and that is the effectiveness and use of antioxidants and vitamin E. There's been research that has been reported at University of Kentucky and Gene Karpa's latest book. And is there any validity to this, or is this just nonsense?
I can't say it's nonsense. I think there's certainly validity in anything you do to maintain good health is good. And it's true with Alzheimer's patients, because the more problems that you have, the greater the impact it could be on your cognitive abilities. So anything that you can do to maintain good health, including exercise, is important. As far as as being a particular way of staving off the disorder, I think that we just have to, the jury is still out on that, and we really have to evaluate the evidence more carefully.
Well, so the important thing is to remember to get a good physical examination and to perhaps contact the Alzheimer's Association, look for support groups, and look for help.
That's right.
I want to thank you very much. I know that in the short period of time we covered a lot of territory, but there's a lot for people to learn about, and I'm sure we'll be reading more and more about this in days and years to come. Thanks again, Doctor. As an older American, you must always be on guard against scams that can bilk you out of your retirement savings. And in today's news segment, Time for Living, Steve Brown tells us about another type of fraud aimed at older Americans.
Thousands of letters like these thrown in the dumpster before they can ever make it to your mailbox.
We believe this is the most significant consumer-related fraud problem we have in the United States. Money estimates are difficult, but I believe it's a safe assumption that over $100 million a year are being lost by American players in this game.
The game, foreign lotteries. Scam artists want you to send them money for lottery tickets from a variety of countries. And that, according to postal officials, is against the law.
That's a part of the scam. We have concerns that, number one, there's any lottery at all to be played. And secondly, even if there was a real lottery, the United States mail cannot be used in furtherance of a foreign origin promotion.
This particular scam we are seeing almost as if it is a direct target at the elderly. Certainly other people have been mailed solicitations, but by and large they're going to the elderly American citizens.
Customs agents are joining the fight against these lottery scams. They say you have virtually no chance of winning.
As you look at these presentations that are mailed out, they appear to be too good to be true. And that should be the first danger signal, because in fact they are too good to be true.
So be forewarned. Don't waste your hard-earned money on these scams.
We're going to turn these mailings, these letters, this paper into the only social redeeming use that they have. We are giving these to a recycling company which turns them into toilet paper.
What should you do if you get one of these offers? Throw it away. I'm Steve Brown. Time for Living.
Every week on Time for Living, we'll be highlighting issues of great importance to older Americans.
Now, in this segment, Health, Finance, and More, we'll be bringing you reports from Washington and across the United States that we hope will make your life just a little better.
We'll be featuring ways to manage your money, tips on health and diet, and take a look at the ways government and private industry are working to change the future.
Now, if you're planning for retirement, or if you've already retired, you want to make sure you have enough money to live comfortably. And sure, you have the monthly income from your Social Security, but that's not everything. And you might be thinking about getting an annuity. Now, some people just don't know what an annuity is. And our reporter and our finance reporter, Steve Burke, is going to tell you all about it right now on Time for Living.
Thank you. Today we're talking about annuities because most of us who are older are more concerned with income and safety of principal than with growth and risk-taking. Annuities are very much like CDs and treasuries in that they have certain guarantees and are very conservative or low risk. For example, annuities can provide an income you can't outlive. These incomes generally have tax advantages, at least under today's tax laws. Put another way, you can have more spendable money. Further, you can accumulate money without tax and have a minimum guaranteed return on your funds. While most annuities are quite structured, there is one type which can vary with economic conditions, not unlike a mutual fund without taxes, until you start to receive the money. Annuities can be best set up to pay both you and your spouse an income for life. Beyond that, your annuity's cash can be passed on to heirs with a minimum of hassle, no probate cost or delays, if a beneficiary is named. In the broad sense, annuities come in three forms: single premium tax-deferred annuities, single premium immediate annuities, and variable annuities. There are variations of these three, but because of limited time, it's best to stay with the basics. With a single premium tax-deferred, you pay a single sum to an insurance company, and they pay interest on the money. But your taxes are deferred until you actually start taking the money in a lump sum, or an income. Annual premium annuities have much the same characteristics, but you invest your money over a period of time. Single premium immediate annuity begins to pay an income to you and or your spouse immediately on a monthly or periodic basis. The payments can be before a specific period of time, 10 years, or for a lifetime. Variable annuities are not unlike 401ks in that they have tax advantages and more flexibility than typical annuities. However, they don't have the same guarantees that conventional annuities make available. Anyone moving towards retirement or in a retirement mode should investigate the merits of an annuity. While they are not for everyone, a strong case can be made for having some of your retirement monies in an annuity, provided by an A-plus insurance company. Before purchasing an annuity, however, it's important to consult with your financial advisor. Ask lots of questions. Make sure that the safety and the terms of the contract are clear in your mind. Read the fine print and check forfeitures and withdrawal charges. How much do annuities cost? Only that amount of money which you feel comfortable investing in the product. You can put in a small amount or a large. There are limits. But it should never be an amount which makes you uncomfortable. What do you do if you have a problem? Contact the person who provided the annuity. If you're not satisfied with the answer, contact the company directly. And if that doesn't do the trick, call the insurance commissioner's office of your state. Are annuities the best retirement vehicle available? No, but they're darn good in the right place. Annuities can be purchased from many sources: your insurance agent, a financial planner, from banks, and many investment houses. There are a lot of good, talented professionals out there to help you, so don't be concerned about getting assistance. Beware of promises which don't ring true to you or seem too good to be true. Don't be rushed into making decisions when you are unsure. Don't make checks out to individuals. Checks should only be made to the company providing the annuity. Ask lots and lots of questions until you're satisfied that you understand what the product will do for you and your family. Then believe in your judgment. Make haste slowly. I'm Steve Burke. Time for Living.
Great job, Steve. Now, if you'd like more information, you can write to Stephen F. Burke, care of us right here at Time for Living, Post Office Box 1698, Framingham, Massachusetts, 01701, or you can call toll-free 1-800-232-7213. Now, if you missed our address, get a pencil and paper, and we'll give it to you again later in our show.
And coming up next on Time for Living, our Traveling Around segment. When it comes to New England winters, if you can't beat them, join them on the slopes. Please stay with us.
With more time and tighter incomes, older Americans are always looking for ways to spend their money wisely while getting more bang for the buck, would you say?
In our weekly Traveling Around segment, we'll highlight some of those stops around the world and in our own backyard that older Americans will certainly enjoy.
Today's Traveling Around destination is right here in New England. If you want to make the most of the winter, why don't you head to the slopes of Wachusett Mountain? And you may be thinking that skiing is only for the young. Well, think again. Folks at Wachusett can get seniors up and shushing in no time at all. Another New England winter. Shoveling snow, slippery sidewalks, nothing but aggravation, right? Wrong. Nothing makes the winter go by faster than heading for the slopes. And a great place to go is Mount Wachusett in Princeton, Massachusetts.
They have a great program here for seniors, so if you haven't skied before, it's a great chance to learn how to do it well.
Ed Ryan and Tim Haggerty are just two of the seniors you'll find on the slopes of Wachusett. They say the staff at Wachusett has helped them get even more out of the sport.
Actually, I didn't start skiing to any degree until I retired, and I've learned a lot about it and skied here a lot in the last few years. They even have lessons here so that there's no problem. You can learn whatever it is that you need to know to ski safely and have a great time.
And a great time they do have. For Tim Haggerty, the suggestion that he go south for the winter is something he can't bear.
A lot of my friends, people my age, they just hate the winter. They can't bear it. All they do is complain about it. And they're always saying, well, I'm going to Florida, and when are you leaving for Florida? And I say, I don't go to Florida in the winter. I go skiing.
Wachusett Mountain is senior friendly. They offer special discounts daily for senior ski packages, ranging from 10 to 25%. They also offer a special program called the Master Clinic. Skiers over 50 get a special rate for a 2-hour coaching session. That program runs through the end of February. And seniors are not alone out on Wachusett slopes. The Wachusett old-time skiers get together for regular skiing and have special functions twice a year to celebrate the many friendships made on the mountain.
Keeps you young. You spend the day out in the slopes. Like today, 35 degrees, a lot of good snow. At the end of the day, you feel great. Your heart's pumping. And, there's no reason, even if you have a little infirmity or a little handicap, no reason for it to hold you back. I have a urostomy. I don't let that slow me down. I'm out here. I'm enjoying it.
You can enjoy Wachusett Mountain day or night. Night skiing is a unique and exhilarating experience not to be missed. And the folks at Wachusett know how to keep the slopes in great condition. Ski Magazine recently rated Wachusett among the best in New England for snowmaking and grooming. After a day on the slopes, you can relax in the warmth of Wachusett Lodge or Copper Top Lounge. For folks like Ed Ryan and Tim Haggerty, Wachusett has it all.
Man, that's what I call living.
Great guys, just terrific guys. It was a pleasure meeting them. Incidentally, Wachusett Mountain is located in Princeton, Massachusetts, just about an hour away from Boston. If you'd like more information about Wachusett and about the special program for seniors, there's address is Wachusett Mountain Road, would you believe, Princeton, Massachusetts, or you can call them at 508-464-2300. And if you know of a great travel destination for seniors, let us know about it so we can feature it on an upcoming Traveling Around segment. You can write to Traveling Around, care of us at Time for Living, Post Office Box 1698, Framingham, Massachusetts, 01701. So you can call us too if you want to at 1-800-232-7216. We even have a fax at 617-329-1774.
And coming up next on Time for Living, get ready for some tap dancing with our second effort salute. Don't go away. developed new interests or hobbies in recent years? Things you never would have considered when you were younger? Well, every week, Time for Living will offer our second effort salute.
We'll be spotlighting folks who have left one field and gone on to bigger and better things, either by design or by default. This segment will provide insights into how some of us have dealt with adversity and change and prospered from it.
And now for today's special second effort salute profile. They're in their 60s and 70s and they're still kicking up their heels. Time for Living's Steve Brown tells us about a tap dance troupe that is dazzling audiences with its golden performances.
Meet 60 Carats. They're anything but your average tap dancers.
Our average age is 70. We do some nice dancing. We work hard at it and it shows. And people seem to like our legs.
Twice a week they practice for hours at a time. They put on 30 performances a year at senior centers, church and charity functions, and in dance competitions.
I do like the exercise because it really keeps you very healthy, very fit, and I don't feel my age at all. And I love performing. I just enjoy every minute of it.
That love of performing definitely shows. They've won countless competitions, and they have lots of fun, even when the performance doesn't go exactly as planned, like the time a dancer's skirt fell off right on stage.
The gentleman who came and picked it up did a shimmy with the skirt and threw it to me. So there are moments like that.
The name 60 Carats comes from their average age when they started dancing together 8 years ago. After all that time, they're still dancing up a storm. I'm Steve Brown, Time for Living.
Boy, do they look great. Now, if you know of some group or individual who we should profile on Time for Living, please let us know. Write to us at Time for Living, P.O. Box 1698, Framingham, Massachusetts 01701. We'll give you that address again later in our show.
Well, on Time for Living, we'll dip into our mailbag, but since this is our first show, our mailbag is empty, unfortunately. But, well, you stay tuned and see how we fill it. Email, cellular phones, fax machines, you may use them, but if you're like me, there's nothing like the feeling of finding a letter in the mailbox.
That's absolutely right. And thank goodness that despite all the high-tech advances in communications, the U.S. Post Office still delivers the mail.
Well, Janet and I hope you'll use the mail to keep in touch with us. Every week we'll dip into our mailbag for your letters, and if you like, we'll read them on the air. Let us know about issues concerning you.
And if you like what you see on our show, please let us know. And if you disagree with something we say, we want to know about that too. So please make a note of our address. It's Time for Living, P.O. Box 1698, Framingham, Massachusetts, 01701.
Now, since this is our first show, our mailbag, as I said, is empty, and we hope you'll take the time to fill it for next week. In the meantime, you might be wondering what Janet and I have been up to in recent years.
Want me to go first?
Yeah, you go first.
Okay, I spent 15 years in radio, and when I realized that nothing is ever secure regarding a job, I had to go back to my original career, and that is a physical therapy. But that was after I tried my hand at the political trail and tried to run against Ted Kennedy for the U.S. Senate. All wonderful and enriching experiences, and maybe it's brought me to where I am right now. But I'm currently a physical therapist, and I'm running the rehab program at the Wellesley Health and Rehab Center, and really thoroughly enjoying it.
Busy woman.
Yeah. How about you? I know you've had an impact too.
Well, let's see. We did 18 years on Boomtown, USA, and that was a great 18 years.
There isn't a person here who hasn't been there at some point in their youth.
A lot of people right here in the studio were on the show when they were kids, so I'm really proud of that. And then I did a show called Earth Lab. That was a nationally syndicated science series. And did about 6 years of that. And then I was asked to teach at Emerson College. And I went there. I've been there for 20 years. I teach television.
And around here, too, everyone seems to know that they've taken a class from you or know something about one of the courses you've given.
It's amazing. Wherever I go in the country, people come up to me and say, hey, I was in your class. And they're mostly at TV stations or movie companies, things
That's
like
great.
that.
Lots of fun, isn't it?
And so I really enjoy teaching. It's a great experience. And certainly when I see people getting into the field as a result of some of the things I've told them, it makes it all the more rewarding.
So that's what's been happening. And when we return, a look ahead at what's coming up next week's Time for Living. Thanks so much for joining us this afternoon for our very first Time for Living show.
We hope you'll join us again next Wednesday afternoon at 3 o'clock for our next show right here on New England Cable News.
If you're considering a career change, either by choice or by necessity, you'll want to tune in next week. Starting over after 50, a look at career changes and options to consider when you get tired of your old job.
We'll also introduce you to Anna Fenn. She's really an incredible woman who, at the age of 97, has published her first book on poetry. You'll want to see this interview.
Of course, we'll bring you our regular features, health, finance, and more, traveling around in our second effort salute as well.
And just in case you missed our address, we'll give it to you one more time. It's Time for Living, Post Office Box 1698, Framingham, Massachusetts, 01701.
We want your feedback, so tell us what you think of our show and what you'd like to see on our show, because in reality, it is your show.
So until next week, remember,
it's time for living.